Karen Williams walked through the downtown mall with her usual confident stride. She carried her designer purse high on her shoulder and wore her expensive sunglasses, even though she was indoors. At 42, Karen had grown used to getting her way in most situations. Her husband owned 3 successful restaurants in the city. She often reminded people of this fact when things didn't go as planned. The mall was busier than usual that Tuesday afternoon. Karen needed to return a dress she had bought the week before. The dress cost $300, but she had decided it didn't look right on her. She didn't have the receipt, but that had never been a problem before. Store managers usually bent the rules for her once she mentioned who her husband was. As she approached the entrance to Nordstrom, Karen noticed a young security guard standing near the doors. He looked to be in his early 20s, with a neat uniform and a serious expression. His name tag read Marcus Johnson. Karen barely glanced at him as she walked past. Already focused on the customer service desk inside the store, the security guard watched the crowds of shoppers entering and leaving. Marcus had been working at the mall for 6 months now. He took his job seriously and always followed the rules exactly as he had been trained. His supervisors had praised him for his attention to detail and professional attitude. He earned just above minimum wage, but he was proud of his work and hoped to move up in the security company soon. Karen made her way to the customer service counter, where a young employee named Sarah greeted her with a smile. Karen placed the dress on the counter and crossed her arms. She expected this to be quick and simple, just like it always was. But today would be different. Sarah examined the dress and asked for the receipt. When Karen said she didn't have it, Sarah explained the store policy. Without a receipt, they could only offer store credit, and only if the item still had its original tags. Karen looked down at the dress and realized she had already removed the tags at home. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but without the receipt and tags, I cannot process this return," Sarah said politely. Karen's face began to turn red. She wasn't used to hearing the word no from retail employees. She raised her voice and demanded to speak with the manager. Sarah called for her supervisor, who arrived a few minutes later and repeated the same policy. Karen became more frustrated and began making threats about never shopping at the store again. The argument grew louder, and other customers started to notice the commotion. Karen's voice echoed through the store as she criticized the employees and their ridiculous policies. She mentioned her husband's restaurants multiple times and suggested that the store didn't know who they were dealing with. The manager remained calm and professional, but stood firm on the store policy. After 20 minutes of arguing, Karen grabbed the dress and stormed out of the store. She was angrier than she had been in months. As she walked quickly toward the mall exit, she decided that someone needed to pay for the embarrassment she had just experienced. Marcus was still standing at his post near the entrance when he saw Karen approaching. Her face was flushed and she was walking faster than before. He could tell she was upset about something, but he continued to do his job and observed the people entering and leaving the area. He had no idea that Karen was about to make him the target of her anger. Karen stopped directly in front of Marcus and stared at him with obvious irritation. The young security guard looked at her with a professional expression, unsure of what she wanted but ready to help if needed. "Excuse me," Karen said in a sharp tone. "I need to speak with your manager right now." Marcus was confused but remained polite. "Is there something wrong, ma'am? How can I help you?" "Don't play dumb with me," Karen snapped. "I just had the worst experience in that store, and this whole mall needs better training for its employees. You security guards just stand around doing nothing while paying customers get treated terribly." Marcus tried to explain that he worked for the mall's security company, not the individual stores, but Karen cut him off before he could finish speaking. She was looking for someone to blame for her frustration, and Marcus was an easy target. "I want to file a complaint," Karen demanded. "Get me your supervisor immediately." Marcus explained that his supervisor was currently doing rounds in another part of the mall, but he could radio him if it was urgent. He asked Karen to explain what had happened so he could help her properly. This only made Karen more angry. "You don't get to question me," she said, raising her voice so that nearby shoppers began to stare. "Do you know who I am?" "My husband owns 3 restaurants in this city. We spend thousands of dollars in this mall every month." Marcus remained calm and professional, despite Karen's aggressive tone. He had dealt with difficult people before, during His training and knew the importance of not escalating the situation. He spoke in a steady voice and tried to de-escalate the conflict. I understand you're frustrated, ma'am. Let me call my supervisor and see how we can help resolve this situation. But Karen was past the point of reasoning. The embarrassment from the store, combined with her general attitude that rules didn't apply to people like her, had created a perfect storm. She began to mock Marcus's appearance and his job. Look at you, she said with a cruel laugh. You're probably making $8 an hour to stand here and pretend you're important. Make more money in a day than you make in a month. You should be thanking people like me for even shopping here and keeping this place in business. Marcus felt his face flush, but he maintained his professional composure. He had worked hard to get this job and took pride in his work. Karen's words hurt, but he knew that responding emotionally would only make things worse. Other shoppers had stopped to watch the scene unfold, and many of them looked uncomfortable with Karen's behavior. Karen noticed the growing audience and seemed to feed off the attention. She continued her verbal assault, making assumptions about Marcus's education, his family background, and his future prospects. She spoke loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, as if she wanted witnesses to her display of superiority. People, like you need to learn your place, Karen said with a sneer. You're here to serve customers like me, not to waste our time with your incompetence. Marcus took a deep breath and tried once more to diffuse the situation. Ma'am, I'm just trying to do my job and help you if there's a problem. If you'd like to speak with my supervisor, I can arrange that for you. But Karen was no longer interested in solutions. She was enjoying the power she felt in putting down someone she saw as beneath her social status. She was about to cross a line that would change everything, and she had no idea what was coming next. Karen's cruel words continued to flow as more people gathered to watch the confrontation. She seemed to be enjoying the attention and the feeling of power that came from publicly humiliating someone she thought was powerless to fight back. Bet you didn't even finish high school, Karen said with a nasty smile. That's why you're stuck in this dead-end job, isn't it? Some of us actually made something of ourselves. Marcus clenched his fists at his sides but kept them there. He thought about his night classes at the community college, where he was studying criminal justice. He thought about his goal of becoming a police officer someday. He thought about his mother, who worked 2 jobs to help pay for his education and was proud of every step he took toward bettering himself. My family probably has more money in our checking account than you'll see in your entire lifetime, Karen continued. You should be embarrassed to show your face in a nice place like this. The crowd around them was growing larger. Some people looked shocked by Karen's behavior, while others seemed uncomfortable and tried to walk away. A few teenagers had started recording the incident with their phones, though neither Karen nor Marcus noticed this at the time. Marcus decided to try one more approach. Ma'am, I can see that you're upset. Why don't we step over to the security office where you can speak privately with my supervisor when he returns? I'm not going anywhere with you, Karen shot back. And I'm certainly not going to be told what to do by someone like you. Do you understand me? Someone like you doesn't give orders to someone like me. Then Karen made the mistake that would change everything. In her anger and desire to hurt Marcus, as much as possible, she decided to make her attack personal in the worst way possible. She looked him up and down and then spoke words that crossed every line of human decency. You know what your problem is? She said, her voice dripping with hatred. Your mother should have taught you better, but she probably doesn't know any better herself. I bet she's just as worthless as you are. That's what happens when people like your family don't know their place in society. The moment those words left Karen's mouth, the atmosphere around them changed completely. The crowd, that had been watching with mild curiosity, now looked genuinely shocked. Several people audibly gasped, and one woman said, "Oh my God," under her breath. Marcus felt something snap inside him, but not in the way Karen expected. Instead of losing his temper or responding with anger, he straightened his shoulders and looked directly into her eyes. When he spoke, his voice was calm and steady, but there was something different about it now. Ma'am, Marcus said quietly, you have no idea what you're talking about. For the first time since the confrontation began, Karen noticed something in Marcus's expression that made her slightly uncomfortable. but she was too caught up in her anger to stop herself from continuing the attack. "Oh, did I hit a nerve?" she said with a cruel laugh. "The truth hurts, doesn't it? Maybe if your mother had raised you right, you'd have a real job instead of playing dress-up as a security guard." What Karen didn't know was that Marcus's mother had died just 3 months earlier from cancer. She had been a nurse who worked at the local children's hospital for 20 years, helping sick kids and their families through the worst times of their lives. She had been beloved by everyone who knew her. Marcus was still grieving her loss every single day. More importantly, what Karen didn't know was that standing in the crowd of people watching this incident was Dr. Patricia Chen, the head administrator of the children's hospital where Marcus's mother had worked. Dr. Chen had personally attended the funeral and had spoken about Marcus's mother's dedication and kindness. She recognized Marcus immediately and had been growing more disgusted with Karen's behavior by the minute. Dr. Patricia Chen couldn't stay silent any longer. She pushed through the crowd and walked directly up to Karen with a look of complete disgust on her face. "Excuse me," Dr. Chen said firmly, "but I couldn't help overhearing your comments about this young man and his mother." Karen turned to face this new person with annoyance. She saw a well-dressed Asian woman in her 50s wearing an expensive suit and clearly professional appearance. Karen assumed this was just another shopper who wanted to get involved in business. That didn't concern her. "This is a private conversation," Karen said dismissively. "Mind your own business." "Actually, this became my business the moment you started talking about his mother," Dr. Chen replied calmly. "You see, I knew Marcus's mother personally." Marcus looked surprised and then recognized Dr. Chen from the hospital. His expression softened slightly as he remembered how kind she had been to his family during his mother's final weeks. Dr. Chen continued speaking. But now, she was addressing the crowd as much as Karen. This young man's mother was one of the most dedicated nurses I've ever had the privilege of working with. She spent 20 years taking care of sick children at our hospital. She worked extra shifts when other nurses called in sick. She stayed late to comfort families who were going through the worst experiences of their lives. Karen's confident expression began to waver slightly. She hadn't expected anyone in the crowd to actually know anything about Marcus or his family. His mother, Dr. Chen, continued, "Organized the hospital's annual charity drive that raised money for families who couldn't afford their children's medical treatments. She used her own vacation days to stay with children who had no family members able to visit them. When she was diagnosed with cancer herself, she continued working as long as she physically could because she didn't want to abandon the kids who depended on her." Right. The crowd was now listening intently to every word Dr. Chen spoke.
Several people
Looked ashamed that they had just stood by and watched Karen's cruel behavior without intervening. Marcus felt tears forming in his eyes. But he stood straighter as Dr. Chen spoke about his mother. It meant everything to him to hear these words from someone who had known and respected her. "And you," Dr. Chen said, turning back to face Karen directly, "just stood here and insulted the memory of one of the finest people I've ever known. You mocked her son, who was working hard to build a good life for himself while dealing with the grief of losing her just 3 months ago." Karen's face had gone pale. She opened her mouth to speak, but found that no words came out. For the first time in years, she was completely speechless. Dr. Chen wasn't finished. This young man could have responded to your cruelty with anger or insults of his own. Instead, he maintained his professionalism and dignity even while you attacked the most important person in his life. That tells me his mother raised him exactly right. The crowd around them had grown even larger, and now people were openly showing their disapproval of Karen's behavior. Someone in the back called out, "Shame on you, lady," and others nodded in agreement. Karen realized that the situation had completely turned against her. The power and control she had felt just minutes earlier was gone. Instead, she found herself surrounded by strangers who had heard her at her absolute worst and were judging her accordingly. But Dr. Chen still wasn't done speaking. She had one more piece of information that would make Karen's regret even deeper. Dr. Chen reached into her purse and pulled out her business card. She handed it to Marcus with a gentle smile, then turned back to address Karen and the crowd. "I want everyone here to know something else," Dr. Chen announced. Didn't just work at any hospital. She worked at Children's Memorial Hospital, where I serve as the head administrator. And Marcus himself has been volunteering in our pediatric ward every weekend since his mother passed away, reading to the children and helping with activities. Karen felt her stomach drop. Children's Memorial Hospital was well known throughout. The city is one of the most respected medical facilities in the region. It was also the hospital that had treated Karen's own nephew 2 years earlier when he had been diagnosed with leukemia. Dr. Chen continued. The same hands you just mocked for doing lowly security work are the hands that help comfort scared children every Saturday and Sunday. The same young man you called worthless is working his way through college, while grieving his mother and still finding time to serve others. Marcus looked down at the business card and saw that Dr. Chen had written something on the back. It was a note asking him to call her office about a potential scholarship opportunity for students pursuing careers in public service. Furthermore, Dr. Chen said, her voice growing stronger, I happen to know that this mall's security team has prevented 3 shoplifting incidents and 1 medical emergency just this month. They do important work that keeps all of us safer. When we shop here, several people in the crowd began to applaud, and Marcus felt overwhelmed by the unexpected support. He had come to work that day expecting it to be just another ordinary Tuesday. Instead, he found himself at the center of a situation that was teaching him something profound about human nature. Karen looked around desperately, trying to find a way out of the situation she had created. She noticed that several people were still recording with their phones, and she realized that her behavior might end up on social media for the world to see. Look, Karen said, trying to regain some control. This has all been a misunderstanding. I was just frustrated about something that happened in the store, and I took it out on the wrong person. But Dr. Chen shook her head. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a choice. You chose to attack a young man doing his job. You chose to mock his appearance, his education, and his family. You chose to be cruel when you could have been kind. An older gentleman in the crowd stepped forward. I saw the whole thing. He said this young man was nothing but polite and professional. He tried to help you multiple times, and you just kept attacking him. A woman with a small child added, My daughter was getting scared listening to you yell at him. No one deserves to be treated that way at work. Karen realized that there was no way to spin this situation in her favor. Every person watching had seen her at her worst, and they were all judging her for it. The power and superiority she had felt earlier had completely evaporated. I think Dr. Chen said quietly that you owe this young man an apology. The crowd fell silent, waiting to see what Karen would do. Marcus looked at her with an expression that held no anger, just sadness and disappointment. He wasn't demanding an apology, but everyone could see that he deserved one. Karen opened her mouth, but the words stuck in her throat. She had spent so many years believing that people like her didn't need to apologize to people like Marcus. But now, surrounded by witnesses to her cruelty and facing the reality of who Marcus really was, she was beginning to understand how wrong she had been. Karen stood in silence for what felt like an eternity, feeling the weight of dozens of eyes upon her. The mall corridor that had been filled with her angry voice just minutes before was now completely quiet except for the distant sounds of shoppers and music from the stores. She looked at Marcus, really looked at him for the first time, and saw something she hadn't noticed before. Behind his professional composure, she could see the pain her words had caused. She could see the grief he was carrying for his mother. She could see the dignity he had maintained even while she tried her best to tear him down. Karen. Then stopped. She had never apologized to anyone she considered beneath her social status. The words felt foreign in her mouth. Dr. Chen stepped closer to Marcus and spoke quietly. Your mother would be so proud of how you handled this situation. Today, she raised a remarkable young man. Those words broke something inside Karen. She thought about her own children and wondered what they would think if they saw her behavior today. She thought about her nephew who had been treated at Dr. Chen's hospital and how grateful she had been to the nurses who had cared for him. I'm sorry, Karen finally whispered, so quietly that several people had to strain to hear her. I'm sorry, she said again, louder this time. Marcus, I'm truly sorry. I was angry about something that had nothing to do with you, and I took it out on you in the worst possible way. Marcus nodded slightly but didn't speak immediately. He was processing everything that had happened and trying to understand how a simple day at work had turned into such a profound experience. "I said terrible things about your mother without knowing anything about her," Karen continued, her voice shaking now. "I said terrible things about you without knowing who you really are. There's no excuse for that. I'm ashamed of myself." The crowd began to disperse slowly, some people nodding approvingly at Karen's apology while others still looked disgusted by her earlier behavior. Several teenagers who had recorded the incident were already posting it to their social media accounts where it would eventually be seen by thousands of people. Dr. Chen handed Marcus another business card. "I meant what I wrote on the back of that card," she said. "Please call my office this week. We have a scholarship program for students like you, and I think your mother would want you to take advantage of every opportunity." Marcus finally smiled, the first genuine smile he had shown since the confrontation began. "Thank you, Dr. Chen. I remember you from the hospital. You spoke at my mother's memorial service." "She was one of our finest," Dr. Chen replied. "I can see she raised you to be just like her?" As Dr. Chen walked away, Karen found herself alone with Marcus for the first time since the incident began. She knew she needed to say more, but she wasn't sure how to express the depth of her regret. "Marcus," she said, "I know my apology doesn't undo what I said about your mother. No, it doesn't take back the pain I caused you. But I want you to know that meeting Dr. Chen and learning who you really are has shown me something about myself that I don't like very much." Marcus looked at her thoughtfully. "Everyone has bad days," he said simply. "The important thing is what we learn from them." Karen walked away from the mall that day feeling like a different person than the one who had entered it. She drove home in silence, thinking about Marcus's grace under pressure and Dr. Chen's words about his mother. She thought about the way she had treated someone based on assumptions about his worth and background. That evening, Karen made 3 phone calls. First, she called the mall's security office and asked to speak with Marcus's supervisor to commend him for his professionalism. Second, she called Children's Memorial Hospital and made a significant donation in memory of Marcus's mother. Finally, she called her own children to tell them she loved them and to ask them to always treat others with kindness and respect. Marcus finished his shift that day with a renewed sense of purpose. Dr. Chen's offer would help him finish school and pursue his dream of becoming a police officer. More importantly, he had learned that his mother's lessons about dignity and kindness were more powerful than he had ever realized. The video of Karen's behavior and subsequent apologies spread across social media, sparking conversations about respect, class, and the way people treat service workers. Karen faced some embarrassment, but she also received messages from people who admired her willingness to admit her mistakes and apologize publicly. Both Karen and Marcus learned something important that day about the power of words to hurt and heal, and about the unexpected ways that human connections can change our perspective on the world around us.